Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining me for another Face Off. I am your host for the evening. I am Reverend D. Marie, and our Face Off program is brought to you tonight through Face to Face Ministries in collaboration with Restoration Community Christian Church and the York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Our Face Off brings to you an up close and personal experience with individuals who have real lives to help to increase your awareness, education, and to be a source of empowerment for all who may be experiencing mental illness, hardship, trauma, or tragedy. Many of you may or may not know, but this month is Autism Awareness Month. And according to one of the largest US studies to date, Black children on average don't get diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder until 3 years after their parents have initially voiced concerns to their pediatricians or their doctors. This automatically places them behind the curve and in many times helps them or doesn't help them, and they miss out on so many early intervention services. Tonight, I am so excited to have with us our special guest, Mrs. Deborah Ritter-Grant. So I am going to bring her into the room with us. Hello, how are you?
Hello, I am fine.
All
Good
right.
evening.
So excited to have you with us. And so to all of my guests, I say Soror. I'm going to call her Soror because that's how I refer to her. And I might fumble your name because I never call you your actual name.
No,
Uh,
you don't.
I don't. I just say Soror. So you all follow along. If I say Soror, you know I'm talking to Mrs. Deborah Ritter-Grant. I don't say that, but that is her name. I am excited to have you here. Please do us a favor and introduce yourself.
Well, as stated, my name is Deborah Ritter-Grant. I am a native of York, Pennsylvania. I was born and raised here. And I left for a short time to go to college in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where I obtained my Bachelor of Science degree in education. Came back to York and started teaching in the school district of the city of York, where I taught high school and middle school. For 36 years. I am a mother of two. I'm also a widow and two sons. And I'm a member of Cornerstone Baptist Church, where I serve as a trustee. And of course, I am a member of the York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, where I am a charter member.
All right. That was an introduction. See, that's how you're supposed to introduce yourself to all future guests. That's how it's done. She covered all spans of life. Thank you so much. I know you as my soror. I've had an opportunity to work with you in many capacities. But over the last couple of days, I'll say weeks, I discovered something about you that I did not know, which makes you the perfect guest for us tonight. Many people know I have publicly said that my daughter has autism. My daughter's on the spectrum. But I don't hear a lot of conversation about autism in the Black community. And so for this month, I wanted to take an opportunity to have a conversation, to speak with someone about their lived experience in this area. And I just discovered this, what was it, 2 weeks ago? I didn't know.
Yes.
So I didn't know. So tell us a little bit about your child who has autism and all with that. Introduce us to him.
Well, my youngest son is 37. He'll be 38 in August. And he was diagnosed with autism about 4 years of age, 4 or 5. He was in school with the, what is it called? Lincoln Intermediate Unit for a while. And then York City took all their children back. So then he finished school in York City. He lived at home until he was 25 years old. And then my husband was having strokes, and it was so difficult to take care of both of them. So then he moved into a Shadowfax house when he was 25. And so he has been there ever since.
Okay. We're going to come back to this. You said the Shadowfax house?
Shadowfax Corporation, yes.
Okay. So we're going to come back to that because I think that's going to be helpful for people. But I want to go in reverse. I want to talk about the early period. As I stated, I started with the statistic that Black children really don't get diagnosed at the same rate that European children do. They're often behind 3 years. So your son was diagnosed at 4. Was that because the pediatrician discovered things, or were you seeing things, you and your husband seeing things at home?
Well, actually, I had been reading about it. I didn't mention it. I have a master's degree in teaching and curriculum, so I had been reading about autism, and it's just the characteristics seem to be some of the signs were the same. But we also had a sorority member whose son um, was diagnosed with autism.
Okay.
So knowing him, seeing some of the things that were happening with my son, I was the one who first diagnosed him, really. And then
Mhm.
we went, I said, I think he has autism. And I forget exactly I think we went up to Hershey Medical Center. I'm not sure. And had him tested. And then they gave us the diagnosis.
Okay.
So,
And I love the fact that you pointed out that you diagnosed him first. And so in my work, I meet a lot of parents who will say, I feel like my child may be on the spectrum. I feel like my child may have autism. And so in my professional opinion, I do think that parents pick up on those traits. They see it early. And so you saw it, and luckily you had the skill set to be able to put that together, which I know for a fact, unfortunately, some people don't, right? So some
right,
people don't.
right. Well, see,
Um,
some a part of it too was having an older son, and I
mhm,
just saw the differences between the two of them, and I knew something wasn't right, but I wasn't exactly sure what it was. But then as time went on, I'm like, yeah, I think this. And reading about autism, and I'm like, this is it. This is what he has, autism. So
mhm.
yeah,
Well, that's really good. And for all of you who may be watching, so words like autism, the spectrum, like those words sometimes get used interchangeably. But autism spectrum disorder, it is a range of disorders. It's not one specific disorder. And I want to make sure that I clarify that, because I do think that there will be people who are watching this who, may have some feelings that something's going on, but not be able to label it. Autism is just one of the things on the spectrum. So you have autism spectrum disorder, you have Asperger's, and then there are like 2 or 3 other things that classify being on the spectrum. So your child may not have autism, but it doesn't mean that they may not be on the spectrum, right? So that's
right,
important. As you're listening, I want you to know that when we say we're talking specifically about autism spectrum disorder, but it may be something else. It may be something else. So,
right.
okay. So you
My son is not high functioning though. He doesn't speak at all.
tell us about
And
the
right.
difference between high functioning and the low functioning.
Yes, and he's low functioning, so he doesn't have any language at all. We tried with speak. I mean, we took him for speech, but we tried with sign language.
Hmm.
He took to it a while, and then he's like, I don't. He didn't like it, so
Okay.
but he understands.
Okay. So that's important to point out. That's just another category that parents have to face, because it is a range. There are individuals who have autism who are low functioning, who are nonverbal, who have to communicate in different ways, and then there are people who have autism who are high functioning, where in many cases, and I say this about my daughter, they have autism because they choose to disclose it. So it's a range. It is not a one size fits all, which is important. And I want to transition to you sharing with us some of those characteristics that you saw specifically to your child, because it's not a box, but we do want to give some insight into what it could look like, or what it did look like from your experience.
Well, the very first thing was, children at a certain age, I guess around 1, they start babbling a little bit, and they say dad, dad, or whatever. He said dad, dad one time, and that was it. After that, he never spoke again. So that was the hint. It's like, oh my goodness, why isn't he speaking?
Mhm.
And when I asked the pediatrician about it, was more like, well, maybe because you're speaking for him. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. But that was the first sign. And really, honestly, when he was born, I think I had a sign then, because um, when he was in the nursery with other babies, all the other babies, the nurse came, brought him in, and says, I'm going to bring him to you because all the other babies are crying. And he was the only one in the nursery that was not crying.
Okay.
And it's like, even though he didn't act like he wanted his mother, I thought I'd bring him to you. So,
Hmm.
like, wow, he was the, because usually one starts crying and they all start crying. And he was the only one that didn't cry. So that was a sign then.
Okay.
And like I said, he didn't speak. And then just the way he moved, he never crawled. He just stood up and walked.
Oh wow.
That was strange.
Hmm.
And his gait was different than most children. The way he walked very carefully, kind of on his toes.
Hmm.
So it was little things like that that made me think something's not right. But I wasn't sure exactly what it was until I started reading about it myself, and then I knew, okay, he's nonverbal. He's um, I guess you would say in a way he would get frustrated when he didn't get what he wanted at the time. So
Hmm.
then he started exhibiting self-interest behavior.
Okay.
Um, he rarely slept, which means I didn't sleep much.
Hmm.
And he was very, let's see, active, I would say. He's very active. He loves to jump. So we had a baby trampoline for him to get
Hmm.
some of that energy out of him. So those were the key things that I remember when he was young.
Okay. That is very helpful. So some key things that you've said that come up a lot when people think autism. You said walking on your toes. You talked about his gait. And so I want to start there because those are the little things that people can easily miss,
You're
right?
right.
But it
Hmm.
is something that is very unique to autism. And so if you have that kid that's on their tippy toes, like that's a big sign. Even in the work that we do, that's one of the first thing I'm looking at. Like even if I'm
Uh-huh.
suspecting, it's like, oh yeah, he always does that, or she always does that. They always do that. And nobody, some parents just see it as, oh, my kid just likes to walk on their tiptoes. But that definitely is one of those associations. So
Yes.
if if you are watching and this is something that you see with a young child in your area, like check the box. And I'm saying this because I want this show specifically to be very educational, because I do think that we do have to do more advocacy when it comes to getting our black and brown children's diagnosed. That you've got to be ticking and tying. Like you said, you did the research. It seemed like autism. So for those that are watching, I want you to be doing this checklist, because you may have to go and advocate. You may have to go to pediatrician. No, I need the test. And it may not come as easy as it did for you, Soror with a grant, but you may have to fight for it. So, okay. So what happens with the transition at school? I know you were an educator, and so you're in the school system. What did that look like?
Well, not at the time, not knowing a lot about autism, just knew the word, knew some of the characteristics. I kind of put my faith in the Lincoln Intermediate Unit, and I don't think that most of those teachers, I know most of those teachers didn't know what they were dealing with.
Mhm.
And really, his self injurious behavior became worse when he started school.
Mhm.
He started biting himself. So their solution was to put a splint on his hand and
Mhm.
arm. So what did he do? He started biting the other hand. So now we got bite marks on both hands, not just one.
Yeah.
The other thing that was done is he was put in the class with Down syndrome children.
Mhm.
And I found out later on, which was a little bit too late, that he probably should have been placed in just a regular kindergarten class.
Mhm.
So that was a mistake, I think, that was made. And I think if that would have happened, he may have maybe started talking just a little bit,
Okay.
because it would have been students around him talking, speaking. So I think that was a big mistake there.
Mhm.
But I didn't know, and I
Right.
learned so I hope people learn from my mistake.
And I love that you said that. Thank you for affirming that, because it's okay to not know, right? Like you won't know it all. As a parent, if your child is anywhere on this journey, in the beginning, if it's a late diagnosis, wherever it is, it's okay to know that you did not know, right? You've got
Yeah,
to give yourself a lot of grace when it comes to this in particular, because it is so not black and white. There are so many aspects of it. And as you just said, you were dealing with professionals that were also learning in the process,
they
right?
were.
And as someone who's in mental health, educate the mental health field is scarce. Like there are not a lot of people that are committed to that work. It takes very special people to be educators and mental health professionals right now. So you've got to have grace, but you've also got to advocate for what your child needs, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Thank you, thank you. So let's switch hats a little bit, because we've talked about your this is your youngest son.
yes.
We've talked about your younger son. What did this diagnosis, how did it impact the whole family dynamic? Because you have an older child and your spouse. Like, how did it impact the family dynamic?
Well, my oldest son, there's such a big gap between the two of them that I always say I had two only children because
Okay.
he was in high school.
Oh wow. Okay.
So so really it impacted. He was a basketball player, so it impacted that in a way because he wanted us to attend his games, and so of course we had to take my youngest because really I didn't let many people babysit him, so that was
Mhm.
the other thing. So he went with us, but he really adapted to what was going on. I made sure that if he got upset with a lot of people around, that I was sitting in a place that I could take him out and that type of thing. So, but it wasn't too hard on my oldest son. Um, the difficulty came with me and my husband, mainly me, because as I stated before, he rarely slept. And
Right.
he was up most of the night, and then I'm up too. And if you didn't watch him, he'd always get into something he shouldn't be into. So
Mhm.
I would be so tired the next day at
Mhm.
work and trying to teach, and then come home and start with the same thing over again. So it was difficult with that. It was difficult to do just about anything, even going to church.
Mhm.
It was hard to attend church because he made noises, and
Mhm.
that was distracting, and I didn't want to distract other people or want him to distract other people. So going places made it kind of difficult for us. So we
Mhm.
spent a lot of time at home.
Mhm.
Um, um, but it was difficult in for my husband too, because see, he thought that after he was diagnosed, well, he'll just get better. And I'm like, no, it's not going to get better. But
Yeah.
he's like, you just don't believe. And I'm like, yes, I do. But I also have read about this, and no, it's not going to get better. He's not going to get better. So
Mhm.
that took a while for him to understand that. And so sometimes it does put a strain on the marriage
Mhm.
because everybody's tired, and this kid is active, really active. So yeah, it was hard, but I'd say it didn't impact my oldest son too much. Not too much. Just us mainly. Just the
Okay.
parents.
And you mentioned something that I think is big for most people of faith, right? So there's this other level, which is you are a family of faith and there's a mental health diagnosis. And so that believing God comes up. And everybody knows I bang with God. Jesus is my homeboy, but y'all
Yep.
know Jesus and therapy go together for me. So I'm saying that to say it is common. I won't say most. It's common for people of faith to go down the spiritual route when trying to navigate mental health. Tell us why, from your perspective, that can be dangerous. Like knowing what you know about this particular disorder, why can that be dangerous?
Well, as you stated, I do believe,
Mhm.
but just believing is not going to change the condition. I mean, it's not. I believe and I pray and I believe that it's going to help me
Right.
to understand more and to deal with it better.
Mhm.
But it's not going to change the situation. And I think some people believe, my husband was one of them. He thinks if you just pray about it and pray, it's going to change, and it doesn't. But
Mhm.
you still, I like I said, I believe, and things have improved. We found improvement, but
Mhm.
it's not going to change his diagnosis. He's still going
Yeah.
to have autism. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's very important. And I'm saying that because if you are someone who does not directly have someone connected to you who has autism, but you are supporting people, you are around people, and you have extended family members that are dealing with children who are on the spectrum or have any type of mental health, you do us a disservice with saying, just pray about it. I
Yes.
often say this, and I'm going to say it again. People in distress talk to God more than people who are not in distress. Calling on God is a reflex. Like people do that when they're in distress. So it's not that people aren't doing that. We just recognize that it's going to take a combination of faith and science, faith and medication, faith and something else to get us through this. I'm saying that because it's important. I need people to know that people are not weak in their faith because they trust the healthcare system and they trust science when it comes to something that is proven to be real. Autism is real. We can't pray it away. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being honest and transparent about that. So let's transition a little bit to Deborah, the woman, because every night not getting sleep, like that's a lot.
That was a lot. That was really hard. And then, especially when at the same time, and it took me a long time, but at the same time, I'm not sleeping much. I'm trying to get my master's degree. I'm sleepy as I'm driving to class. And so it was really hard. Um, and it took me, as I stated, 7 years before I could get my master's because I just couldn't take all those courses. I could just take one here and okay, maybe I can get somebody to watch him in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my husband took off one summer just to watch him so that I could take a couple courses. So, uh, yeah, that was hard trying to navigate, trying to get, teach my lessons, prepare for them, and all that, and no sleep.
Yeah.
But when I could find time to get a nap, somebody, if my son was there and he would watch him, or if my husband would watch him, sometimes I could get a nap, and that would help revive me a little bit, and I'd move on. But it was very difficult. I
Yeah.
think that's one reason why I gained so much weight too.
Get it. I get it.
Yeah. Uh huh.
Listen, the fact that you stayed at it, like it speaks to just how tenacious you are. Because I'm still stuck at guys at not sleeping at all, and
Yeah.
to be working on a master's program and teaching and being a mother and being a wife. Like this is why Black women rock. Let me just say that, because that's a lot. That takes endurance, right? So I applaud you for sticking that out. You're a teacher. You're dealing with all that you have to do at home, yet you are still out here educating the youth of York City. Let's talk about educator Deborah.
Okay.
Educated. What was that like? Like what were you focused on? Um,
Well, as you know, I was a mathematics teacher.
mhm,
Um, And I found out, as I stated before, that I taught the middle school. I found out that I really didn't care to teach middle school children. I really loved the high school. I love the older students. So I
mhm,
really enjoyed teaching in high school. Um, and I think in some respects, I made an impact on some of the students, and especially some of the girls that had children,
mhm,
and I always stated to them, you can do whatever you want to do, but remember, as they say, it takes a village. You need to have a backup system. You
yeah,
need to have people in your corner that are going to help you. And again, going back to what I said with my master's degree, my mother was alive at the time and she did what she could do because that was one of my babysitters too. But
mhm,
you had to have people to help you, and
yeah,
you have to tell them, I need help. You
mhm,
just can't sit back and pretend like you can do it all. And I had to state, tell people I need help.
mhm,
And so yeah, I think that in speaking to students about, some of my challenges, like I said, especially some of the young ladies that had children. Um, I thought that I was trying, and I think I did help a lot of them with
Mhm.
that. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed teaching. I did, but that's gone now.
Like, I'm not doing
that's
it.
that's over.
You
Something
have
else.
paid your dues. Absolutely.
That's
You
right.
paid your dues.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. So your son, we talked about early years, right? And I know that you're still going through your education process. This is just a D. Marie question now. As a mom, you had these feelings that something was different about your child, right? And you've raised a
Yes.
child already. So you've gone through all of the warm and fuzzies that come through certain phases. What was that like for you? Not necessarily still
I
present in
lost
different
you.
ways.
I lost you. You kind of went out. What was the question
I
again?
said, what was it like with your second child? What was it like with having those warm and fuzzies or some of those same things that you went through with your older son, or was it different? Like, did you get to share in some of those same experiences in different ways, in the non-traditional ways?
Yes. One thing that helped, and I didn't mention this, one thing that helped my son is, through research, we sent him for um 3 months down to Johns Hopkins to Kennedy Krieger,
Mhm,
where they helped us and helped him work on his behavior and,
mhm,
gave us hints and a program that was going to help him. And as the years have gone, he's so different now than
mhm,
what he was before. But yeah, I don't know. The warm and fuzzies, it was just, honestly, it was just so different with my oldest, and him. I mean, my my youngest, a lot of people think that um people on the spectrum, sometimes it's hard for them to show affection,
mhm,
but we showered a lot of affection on him. So
mhm,
he is surprising to people when he sees me now,
mhm,
that he comes and kisses me, and they're
mhm,
like, oh, that's shocking, but we
mhm,
showered so much love on him, and like, kind of forced him to kiss you and that type of thing,
mhm,
that he now does that.
mhm,
So like I said, it had to be more of pushing him to do things,
mhm.
to hug you, to kiss you, um, just to be around you sometimes, just sit with you, because he wanted to be in his own little world. And sometimes you wanted, us to be together. So,
Yeah.
we had to kind of force that on him, but he did adapt.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I'm very happy that you said that because the emoting part of autism comes up a lot in families, right? And so on one hand,
Hmm.
I think there's a delicate dance. You have to be able to model for your children what you think is valuable for them to have. Like, that's the nurturing part of any development from my perspective.
Yes.
But there is also a give and take to understand their capacity to know this is just not going to work for my particular child, right? So there's the dance that
Hmm.
has to happen. It can't be all one way or all the opposite way, all what we as, what we want, or all what people who are on the spectrum can take. There, it takes nurturance. And so I'm very happy that you pointed that out, because it is true. There are people who are on the spectrum who can learn things that may not innately comfort level, but it doesn't mean
Yes.
that adjustment can't happen. And that's important to hear, because there are a lot of parents that have kids with diagnosis that it's okay, let me just set up the world the way that works for them and I will just let them be. Or,
Hmm.
I don't care, this is what we're doing and I need you to adjust. And so now we're in a power struggle because you're trying to get a kid who is naturally going to be rigid in their thinking to just go along with what you want without going through the process of helping them, right? So I think it's important
Right.
to note that it's a give and take. It takes some nurturance. Kids on the spectrum, they have a love language that's uniquely
Yes.
theirs. And that's what's important to know. It may not be demonstrated the way we would expect it, but it doesn't mean it's not there if you're looking for it. If you're just like you learn any other child, you're learning your child. You're learning how they communicate. So it's very good.
Yes.
What about
Yes.
community supports? Like what, and I mean larger community, not just, the community that surrounded you, but being at that stage in life, what did autism look like? Like what type of supports were out there? Do you feel like we've gotten better with that, or was it
I
scary?
think it, you know what, it may have gotten better, but there was little support
Mhm,
when after he was diagnosed. It was very little support. I don't, like I said, the only thing that I had was the Lincoln Intermediate Unit, which didn't give me much.
mhm,
I did a lot of studying on my own.
mhm,
Okay, and but as I did that, like I told you, he went to Kennedy Krieger, which helped a lot because they gave us a lot of, hints,
mhm,
suggestions, program, to help him. But it was, especially in this area, in York, it was just nothing
mhm.
really.
Yeah.
And him, like I said, he's 37, almost 38. So I am hoping, I hope
Mm.
that things have changed,
Yeah. Yeah. Prayerfully.
um, yeah, or have improved since he was diagnosed. So
Now, I will say that there are some resources in York. There are, agencies that are specific for autism that do testing and all of that are right here in York. So there has been some progress, but the advocacy component will always be necessary. As a parent,
yes,
you are going to have to be a cheerleader for your child. You
yes.
are your child's biggest advocate. I don't care how many letters a professional has behind their name. When you sit across from them, you are your child's advocate. So you keep knocking on doors until one opens that needs to be open. So y'all know I go on tangents about that. I trust the system
Well,
because
and it doesn't change. It doesn't change that, I'm still his number one advocate, even
Mhm.
now. He's not at home, but everyone knows, she's the
Yeah,
one. She's going to be advocating for him.
good, good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the transition phase. So you mentioned X Corporation. I am not familiar with what that organization is. So tell us about, getting your child to transition to the independent living stage. Because I know that that's a big question for people who have younger kids. Like, is it possible that my child will be able to do that?
Well, what happened was when he started in school, his teacher would occasionally take his students to Shadowfax, which is located on Patterson Street. Okay, and it's a day program, and as well as they have workshops there where some students who are high functioning, or some individuals, because they're not all students, some individuals that are high functioning, they work in the shop, and they earn money from this too. So he introduced me to Shadowfax, his teacher, when he was in high school. And as I stated, when my husband started having these strokes, he I'm trying to think exactly. He had a caseworker, and I don't remember what agency it was from right now, and nor do I remember his name. But I know that caseworker worked exceptionally hard for me because he says, "I understand what's going on because my whole schedule had to change,
Mhm.
um, and I had to ask people to at day program, can he come in early? Can he stay a little late? I had one of my sorors when I had to leave school early, take my class so I could get him and then bring him back because I was department chair at the time and he would sit in our department meetings, that type of thing. So he said, "You just can't keep going on like this." He says,
Mhm.
"I am going to," because back up a little bit. His teacher suggested that I put him on the list so that he could be a resident through the Shadowfax Corporation.
Okay.
Well, that's difficult. The list is very long. But the caseworker, after my husband had so many strokes, he said, "Okay, I'm going to push him to the top of the list,"
Oh
which he
wow.
did. So he got him at the top of the list, and that's how he got into the residential program. But he was already into the day program at Shadowfax. So then there's two parts to it: residential and day program. So
Mhm.
that's how he got to Shadowfax Corporation. But
Okay.
there's other agencies too. Well, I
Okay.
know you know that there's other
Mhm.
agencies, but Shadowfax was introduced to us by his teacher in
Mhm.
high school. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted you to talk about that because there again, a lot of times the resources are around us and it's like a secret like meeting. Like if you don't know somebody that knows, you don't know, right? And it
Right.
may that as much now, but it is still very hard. It's not as simple as going into Google and dropping it in there and coming up with what you need. And so I'm saying that for all of the powers that be, because it should be simple. You parents should not have to dig this hard for this type of resource. But we do.
Yeah.
So it's important for, voices like yours to let us know what's out there because autism is being diagnosed so much more in our communities. When I say I see it every day, if I go into 8 homes, I want to say about 3 or 4 of them I'm sending for a neuropsych evaluation
Wow.
because all of the signs are there. And I'm not exaggerating. It is,
Mm,
it is once I look at all of the diagnoses that are on the piece of
yes.
paper, I skip over that and I look at this child and it's like, well, wait, they do what? And it's
Uh-huh.
like, okay, we've gone through ADHD, and which is bringing me to my next point, because typically Black and brown kids will get diagnosed with lots of other things, and the behaviors will be treated before a autism spectrum disorder will be given, right? That's it. It doesn't sound like that was your child's process.
Now that came afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's in there.
Yeah,
Because of
it
the
was in
behavior.
there.
Right, because normally you see the behaviors first, right? You had a different
Uh-huh.
level of insight, so you knew what to look for. But in a lot of small children and families, you see the anger, you see the rage, you see the self-harming, and in some cases, you do see a child being nonverbal, and sometimes that's translated as ADHD when you're in school. Like sometimes that's what happens. And so I'm saying that to parents that are watching, you can't stop at ADHD. If there are other things that are
No.
you're seeing, you've got to keep pushing. These diagnoses are not stamped for life. Let me say that. And they will change based on who you're engaging. You've got to keep going until you get beyond the textbook first one, which for our kids is going to be ADD or ADHD. There could be something deeper. Look beyond the behaviors to the other things that you see in their lives. I'm chuckling. And so full disclosure, because y'all know I be telling on myself, right? Um, my child didn't get diagnosed until she was in college. I
Really?
I sent her to be diagnosed. I sent her for neuroscience so bad. She gonna kill me for this. But I sent her to get the evaluation because I was just like, okay. And I was fighting it because I was like, all the signs are there. But I chuckled because once I realized all the signs were there, I literally went back to childhood and I was like, oh my gosh, this is why they had this fight over this white plate. There was one single white plate in my house that my child wouldn't let anybody else eat off of. And we had
Definitely.
real knockout dragouts over a single white
Oh
plate.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And it seems nonsensical, but those are things that families have to look for. Like it is, and it's a repetitive fight over
I was going to
something.
say that you got to
Yes,
look for that repetitive behavior, and
yes.
you're right. One
One
dish,
thing,
one
one
spoon, one.
that white
Yeah,
plate. It was the most. It wasn't even a cute plate.
yeah,
A white plate, but now. And again, it didn't look like the typical meltdowns that one would assume to trigger, hey, something's wrong. You just like, you got an attitude problem because she's very high functioning. So I missed it.
uh-huh.
But when she got older, I began to see more. So again, you may not get those early signs. So you can't stop looking at your children just because they've reached the thresholds. You've got to
Yes,
keep paying attention because I won't say later life diagnosis can happen. You've just
uh-huh.
got to know what to look for. If your child is great and then they get to high school and all of a sudden it's a major struggle, look for things. If they get to college and they're falling apart, look, you got to pay attention. So yeah, so let's talk about the rigidity. Like, because I think that's probably something that is across the board consistent.
I
Did your
agree.
did your son have like certain things that it was like this is his ism, like it has to be this?
Oh yes, oh yes. It was one toy he played with all the time. I don't care how many toys he had. My grandkids now, it's like, oh, grandma has all these toys. Yeah, because everybody was trying to find something different for him to play with, but it was one
Mhm,
toy that he wanted to play with all the time. Yeah,
mhm.
yeah. Same thing as you were stating, is one cup that he had to have. It's one bowl he had to have. He will not use, and he even knows how to do it. He will not use a fork. He's got to have a spoon, and he will go and get it if you don't give it to him. So I know exactly what you mean.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's no need in fighting over it. Just let him have it.
Yes.
You know,
Pick your battles. Like pick
it's
your
exactly
battles. Like
exactly.
it is, and I'm saying this as a strong-headed person. Sometimes parents, when we have littler packages, we feel like our job is to force them to do what we want because we are the parent, right? If your child is on the spectrum, you're gonna lose this battle. Like it, just
Yeah,
pick your battles. Is it worth it? And I'm saying that because in the process of dealing with the kid on the spectrum who may not be diagnosed or is diagnosed, you're inflicting harm unnecessarily.
really. Yeah,
I need people to know that just because your child is on the spectrum or is functioning differently, it does not give us a right to verbally communicate in any fashion that we see fit. And I love the fact that you've raised up that your child is nonverbal because this is the other side of what I see. Just because a child is nonverbal does not mean that they're not understanding.
oh yeah,
Like parents need to know that you can have a nonverbal child who is hearing what you say and
exactly.
understanding what you're saying about them, even though they can't verbally respond.
Exactly. And
It's,
he does. He knows everything we talk about. He
mhm,
knows. And and you can tell by his expression whether he likes it or he doesn't like it. So,
mhm.
we don't talk about, well, we'll say good things about him, but we don't say anything bad around because he doesn't like it at all. But yeah,
Yes,
he does understand
that's a
everything you're saying.
big thing that I'm coming across. And again, think about, I want to do role reversal because think about your child realizing that they're not functioning like everyone else around them. Just in these last couple of years, I've had a lot of encounter with adults who are on the spectrum, right? So most of the time I'm dealing with children. So now I'm dealing with a lot of adults who've been on the spectrum for a while just to hear how exhausting it is to just be.
I
Like
can
to be
imagine.
able to say, I am so tired of trying to
Yeah.
fit into the world's paradigm. It's exhausting. At the end of
Yes.
the day, I don't want to do anything but crawl in the bed and do nothing because I'm
Mhm.
tired of just trying to feel normal or function in what is classified as normal, right?
Right. I was going to say, what is normal? Because
Exactly.
that's not their normal.
Exactly.
Our normal is not theirs. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So, and I'm saying that because we often think of autism as little kids, right? When we hear autism, we do think little kids. There
Yeah.
are neurodivergent people in adult packages engaging you each
Yes.
and every day. And so that's something that we as humans need to recognize. There are people who are not getting it the way you're communicating it. And it doesn't mean that something's wrong with them. It means we need to repackage it because essentially that's what you've shared with us. You've had to repackage some stuff for your child to, do some things to make it work. We've got to be able to do that because if we've got to work, like if 45% of people are being diagnosed with autism, hypothetically, what do you think the workforce is going to look like in the future?
Yeah.
These children are going to grow. And so this is something that we've got to learn about and investigate more because there will be more people in our workforces, in our churches, in our like classrooms engaging us that we're going to have to be able to adapt to instead of trying to get their circles to fit into our squares. So it's very important. So even if you don't have a child on the spectrum or you don't know anybody, you still need to learn because it's not going anywhere. It's
Right.
not going anywhere. It's not, I think about back in the day when I was younger. I remember I had a cousin who was schizophrenic. I never saw her because she was hidden away, right? This is not what's happening with ASD. It's not
Yeah.
going away. We've got to be mature enough to learn more about it so that we can be prepared so that kids and young adults and seasoned adults don't have to feel weird just because we're processing differently.
Right. Right. I agree.
So is there anything like was there a moment in your journey where you just needed a big dose of faith? Like you needed to pull on some people. Like what was the low?
Oh gosh. I had a lot of low moments. Um, let's see, what was you know what? It was the earlier years was the low. It really was. Um, just knowing how hard it was going to be for him, as you just were speaking about, in the society, that was the lowest for me when I got the diagnosis and knowing that he's not going to change. He, like you said, he's not going to fit into this world. And
Yeah.
that was the lowest for me. I cried a lot
Yeah.
early on. And
Yeah.
then it's like, he's not going to change. You got to find a way to help him.
Hmm.
And so that was the lowest.
Yeah.
After that, not so much, because I knew what I had to deal with, and I had to help him the best way that I possibly could. So that, yes, the diagnosis was the lowest part, the
Hmm.
lowest point. Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense. I like
yeah.
to tell parents, and it's different for everybody, and I know that going in. I tell every parent the same thing. I am helping you to get this diagnosis so that you understand and you can learn more about what it looks like. Your life has been what it's been, right? You just haven't had the proper tools to navigate it. Because by the time you get a diagnosis, you've already been living with a kid on the spectrum. No one
Right.
has ever told you that you're living with a kid on the spectrum, but you've already been doing that. So all it's about is getting new tools. The diagnosis isn't going to change anything other than give you better tools to engage your child, because
Well, it
it's
also puts a label on it.
yeah, I'm
It
about to
puts
say,
that label is what made me
yeah,
cry, and that's really
that's
what
what I
it
was about
was.
to
It was
say.
the
It's
label.
that big label, and it
Yes,
is heart wrenching. And I get it. I'm like,
yes,
nobody wants that label because what comes along with it. So
right.
I start off trying to help families. It is the world's label, but you've already been living with your child, right? And
Yeah,
so teaching your child to live with their self beyond the label. And don't make it taboo. Like this is why we're doing this month. We have to stop being silent about our kids who are on the spectrum, because when we do that, we other them. And so if we want to empower our children, we've got to stop hiding this and normalize it. It's just everybody has something. You've got ASD, your mama got diabetes, you got ASD, somebody else got, hypertension. So we've got to be able to normalize this so that our kids can be empowered wherever they fall on the spectrum, right? High
yes,
functioning or low functioning. That's very important. Very
yes, it
important.
is. And the other thing too is, you have some people need to realize that, like you said, that's a diagnosis. You don't say my child is autistic. It's like my child has autism, or
You're
my
right.
child is on the spectrum.
Yes.
That's the way I think you need to address it. Instead of just saying that. I don't say my child is autistic. No, he has
Hmm.
autism. So
Yes.
yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. Um, okay, so we are getting to the end of our journey. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Is there an aspect of your experience that, I haven't raised the question that you want to share, that you want to bring up and communicate?
I think you've touched on just about everything. I can't think of anything right now that we haven't that's happened that we haven't discussed.
Okay.
Mm,
What is
no, I
life
don't
like
think so.
now for your son? So we pretty much talked about the transition to, like, what is life like now as a 30 plus year old man?
Well, I'll tell you what surprised me. I thought when I took him to his house, that because he had been with us, for 25 years, I didn't think that he would be able to make it. Really, I did. I don't know why I thought that, but
Hmm.
that first night, it was like, see you. you
Yeah.
know, uh, he enjoys his life. It's obvious that he does. There are times when I go to see him, and he's like pushing me out the door. It's like, okay, or if he comes to see me, it's like he lets me know when he's ready to go. So he's enjoying his life. Where he lives, he shares with two other men,
Hmm.
and I say he's the king of the house. I told him from the beginning, that's how he is. He thinks he's the most important person, and so he shows at his house, and they kind of let him get away with it. But he's enjoying his life. You can tell he loves it. So
That's
yeah.
amazing. That
Hmm.
I don't know that I know an adult like to go through the transition. So it's remarkable to hear. And I know that other people are listening, and they're saying the same thing. He's living independently. Like, that is
Yes.
remarkable. That's remarkable. Okay.
Yes.
So nothing else you want to say? No. Different question.
No.
to the young mother, to the young person who is getting this diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
what would you advise them to do once they have the diagnosis?
I would advise them to read as much as they possibly can about autism. I would suggest that they also join organizations. I would suggest that they talk with other parents who have children that are on the spectrum or have autism. And again, I think they need to have a village,
Mhm.
people that understand autism, the spectrum, and I suggest that they ask for help and let them know I need help.
Yeah.
And people will come to your aid if you ask them, for the most part, and especially those who know something about the condition. So that's
Mhm.
what I would suggest. If they get the diagnosis, start studying right away. See how you can help your child,
That's
and
why.
ask for help. Yeah,
Mhm. And
do a
there
lot of
are
research because it's out there. You just got to look hard for it.
and there are support groups, there are Facebook groups, like there are so many groups that are designated for parents who have kids who are on the spectrum. And if you are a teenager or an adult that's getting a later life diagnosis, there are support groups for you. And I think the community is very important. Like what we don't want to do, and I advocate against this, isolation is not the solution. You have
Yeah.
to build relationship in community. You have to build relationship in community. So wonderful. Okay. So we've reached that part of the program. First of all, I'm not saying thank you yet, but thank you. We've reached that part of the program where I've placed you in the hot seat for about 50 some odd minutes. And so
Yes.
now we have an opportunity to reverse roles, and you have an opportunity to ask me anything you want to ask me.
Well, I was surprised when you said that you had a child on the spectrum because I didn't know that until you stated it tonight.
Really?
Um, no, I did not know. I did not know. So I was actually surprised. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's something new. Um, you know what? I don't really have anything to ask you. I mean, you've stated so much tonight, and you've given us a lot of information. So, no, I don't have anything to ask you.
Oh, I love it. That's because she knows me, y'all. She really don't know.
That's part of it because I do know you. I just didn't know that you had a child on the spectrum, though. Yeah.
Yeah, and I full disclosure, when we had Autism Awareness Day, I was trying to reach Ariana all day because I wanted to ask her if I could post her picture. And she never answered the phone. So, me being me, I posted her picture. And she called me the next day and she said, "Girl, I don't know if I was ready for that." And so immediately I felt bad. But she said, "Mom, it's okay." But she had not publicly made that declaration in her own way. And I was like, "Are you going to be okay with me talking about this?" And so she gave me, her stamp of approval. But no, people would not necessarily know unless I tell them and then they are able to pick it up, right?
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
Ariana's been and that's what I told her, and that's what I remind her of. People have lived with you for 20 years before you got this diagnosis. You've just been Ariana. Like they know you,
Yes.
they know how you function. So it means nothing other than we now have a better insight on what's happening. We can slow each other down and we can do things differently and to create, opportunities for less damage for you, right? But nobody's going to treat you different because we know Yana as Yana, right?
Yeah.
So it was a and I'm sure there are people who are hearing this for the first time even still. There are family members who probably have not heard this before because again, Yana's just Yana. But
Hmm.
yes, my
Well,
daughter
just
is
like you stated, you were surprised because you didn't know that I had a son, and
I didn't.
we talk a lot.
Yes, yes.
So you didn't know that I had a son that has autism.
I
So
did
yeah,
not.
I know you were shocked when I
I
told you that.
was. I really was. And I mean, And so here's the thing. I was shocked, but it was also a moment of relief for me. So if you want to talk about the power of telling your story, as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, there is somebody I can talk to who've been through this and their child's older than my child. That's, because that doesn't exist in my world. You
Yeah,
are literally the person with the child older than my child. Everybody else's children are younger than my children, my
right,
child. So that was enlightening for me. Like, it was exciting for me to have somebody to be able to turn to, which is why we are doing this. We, in the Black community, we need this because the diagnosis is coming out more in our community. It
right.
is, and that's a lot. It's a large percentage of people that are getting diagnosed with ASD. So we've got to make sure that we are building community. We've got to do
I
that.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. This has been
Yeah.
a wonderful conversation tonight. I am so thankful for, having you being able to talk to us and give us a glimpse into your life and your journey. Because it's
Well,
definitely
thank you.
a journey. It definitely has been. For all of you who are watching, next month is May. I don't know who's going to be with us, but it is May. And so there are lots of wonderful things happening in May. So make sure you join us again. From all of us here at Face to Face, I want to thank you for taking this time to share this space. For those who are watching, please know if you are brave enough, anything that you go through can be utilized to help you grow. It does not matter if you consider yourself to be seasoned, middle aged, just starting out, or in your youth. It's never too late to take the mask off and to tell your truth. Thank you so much for joining us here at Face to Face Ministries in partnership with the York Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Restoration Community Christian Church. We will see you fourth Thursday next month. Thank you so much, and you all have a wonderful night. We will see you again.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being